Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed a joint session of the U.S. Congress on Wednesday amid widespread protests in Washington. Thousands of demonstrators gathered in the U.S. Capitol, calling on the U.S. to end arms sales to Israel and to implement an immediate ceasefire in Gaza. Prime Minister Netanyahu described the demonstrators as Iran's useful idiots.
Demonstrators calling for an end to the war that has killed more than 39,000 Palestinians as they weaved through the streets of the nation's capital, carrying Palestinian flags and signs with messages such as "Arrest Netanyahu" and "End all U.S. aid to Israel." Some of them believe Washington has rolled out the red carpet for a war criminal.
We are not armed. We don't have anything. They are spraying us.
I don't understand what he's doing here. John only doing PR for himself because he's looking for his own political survival.
He should stay home, bring them home, seal the deal, and end the war.
But on Capitol Hill, the focus of eyes outside got a standing ovation inside. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, speaking to Congress, defending his international image, he thanked the U.S. for its support for Israel and laid out his vision for a post-war Gaza, amid growing pressure on his government to wind down and end the war.
This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization. It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life. For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together.
But he also didn't hold back on his American critics.
Anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil. They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They stand with people who came into the kibbutzim, into a home. The parents hid the children, the two babies, in the attic, in a secret attic. They murdered the families, the parents. They found the secret latch to the hidden attic, and then they murder the babies. These protesters stand with them. They should be ashamed of themselves.
After being turned away by officers, protesters settled at Union Station in Washington, D.C., next to the U.S. Capitol. They hung Palestinian flags from towering poles and set an American flag on fire.
To the United States, to the government, to the Congress, to the Senate, Netanyahu is our problem. Ban him.
Meanwhile, some Democratic Party lawmakers made clear their opposition to Netanyahu's address and did not attend the session. Prime Minister Netanyahu will stay in the U.S. for the rest of the week. He's due to meet President Joe Biden at the White House on Thursday and Donald Trump at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida on Friday.
Dr. Bola Adediran is an international relations expert. He joins me live from the UK for more on this development. A very interesting development in the United States, Dr. Adediran. It's Netanyahu's fourth address to the U.S. Congress. But the Prime Minister this time, we saw him face an increasingly fractured Congress, with Democrats even divided over support for the ongoing war in Gaza. Some of them didn't attend the Congress. Others were seen walking out earlier. How does this impact on Netanyahu's message and his goals for this address?
I think it does. It does because, not only because, as you've mentioned, the Democrats, this war, the way that it's been prosecuted, has been very popular with the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. And in many ways, you could even say that one of the reasons why Biden was struggling in the presidential race just before he decided to step down was because of the way support that the U.S. government and the Biden administration gave to Netanyahu. So in many respects, Netanyahu is an unpopular figure in certain parts of the U.S. and in certain part of the democratic politics of the U.S. And we've seen that with the protests that you mentioned, the protests outside of the Capitol Hill and even within the Joint Congress yesterday, where some members of the family of those who have been taken hostage were also making their voices known.
So when you,
but I think,
yes, please go ahead.
But I think that in many respects, what would also have taken the shine out of Netanyahu's message was the very monumental decision by Joe Biden to step down. In fact, rather than Netanyahu being at the center of U.S. politics yesterday and for that to dominate the headlines, what is dominating the headlines is Kamala Harris' ascension to the Democratic.
Indeed. When you add up the division in Congress with the protest we saw outside the Capitol Hill, do you think these will potentially affect the current state of U.S.-Israel relations, and what implications does it really have for future cooperation?
No, I don't think it will. It will affect future U.S. relations. The relations between the U.S. and Israel date back to 1948, the founding of Israel. The U.S. has been a staunch partner of Israel. And it is Israel at the moment receives the highest amount of U.S. aid of any country in the world. In fact, about $3.8 billion annually goes from U.S. coffers into Israel's military security. And so I don't think it will. In fact, as you can see, even in previous administrations like Barack Obama's administration, where Netanyahu and Barack Obama had a very strained relationship, U.S. and Israel relationship was still steadfast in many respects. So I don't think this protest will make a massive dent. Obviously, you want a robust, you want a concerted, country, a galvanized country in support.
Netanyahu didn't seem to have been caught off guard with the many protests greeting his address yesterday. He actually took on them directly, calling out campus protesters and prosecutors at ICC. How did his characterization of protests and criticism as anti-Semitic and misguided, going as far as saying that calling the demonstrators Iran's useful idiots? How do you see this impact on the discourse around Israel-Palestine and the implications it potentially would have on free speech and activism worldwide?
It does. It's quite surprising that in one of the most one of the leaders of one of the countries with a history of promoting free speech, that it will stand in front of the Congress and denounce protesters who are using their God-given rights and lawful constitutional right to express their displeasure about how the war has been prosecuted. So I thought that was very anti-democratic in every sense. And I think we also have to call out Israel's continued use of anti-Semitism as a way to stop conversations around many things, including the way that it's prosecuted the war. It's not everything that is anti-Semitic. It is not every criticism of Israel that should be seen as anti-Semitic. And in many ways, we could say that it's an attempt to stifle democratic discourse. But I think that in what is much more important is to see that there are some courageous members of the Democratic Party who have stood in line with the global protest against Netanyahu's prosecution of the war and decided to boycott that address yesterday.
Well, the conversation is on as to the U.S. and Israeli government responses to the Gaza war and how it reflects their commitment to human rights and international law, especially the fact that it doesn't seem like consequences might arise from these actions. But it's a good place to leave it, and we'll continue this conversation subsequently. Dr. Bola Adediro, international relations expert, thank you for talking to us.
Thank you for having me.